In the grim darkness of the far future, where hope is a fleeting whisper and despair reigns supreme, there exists a force so vile, so repugnant, that its very name sends shivers down the spines of even the most hardened warriors. Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, stands as a testament to the inexorable march of entropy and the inevitability of death. Festering in the depths of the warp, this chaos god embodies the cycle of life, death, and rebirth in its most grotesque form. His domain is one of pestilence, disease, and decay, yet paradoxically, it is also a realm of rebirth and renewal. Nurgle's influence seeps into every corner of the galaxy, infecting not just bodies, but minds and souls. To understand Nurgle is to comprehend the very nature of existence in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. His followers, the Plague Marines, and countless other disease devotees, spread his gifts with fervent zeal. These blessings, in reality, are nothing more than horrific afflictions that twist and corrupt all they touch. The Garden of Nurgle, his demonic realm within the warp, serves as a macabre reflection of life's endless cycle. Here, amidst rotting foliage and bubbling pools of filth, new diseases are born and cultivated. These plagues are then unleashed upon the material universe, each one a masterpiece of suffering and degradation. Nurgle's philosophy is one of acceptance and inevitability. Where Khorne rages and Tzeentch schemes, the plague god offers a perverse form of comfort. His followers embrace their afflictions, finding strength in their suffering and joy in spreading their patron's blessings. This cosmic entity's influence extends far beyond mere physical corruption. Planets fall to his plagues, entire systems succumb to his rot, and even the mighty Space Marines are not immune to his temptations. The Death Guard, once proud sons of the Emperor, now stand as Nurgle's greatest champions, their bodies bloated and putrid, yet undeniably powerful. In the grand tapestry of the 41st millennium, Nurgle represents a fundamental truth: all things must decay. Yet, in this decay, he promises new life, albeit one warped beyond recognition. His cycle of destruction and rebirth poses a unique threat to the Imperium of man and all who oppose the forces of chaos. As we delve deeper into the lore of Nurgle, we will uncover the intricate web of corruption that spans millennia. From the fall of mighty heroes to the rise of pestilent champions, the story of the Plague God is one of unrelenting horror and fascinating complexity. Prepare to explore the fetid realm of the Lord of Decay, where life and death dance in a never-ending waltz of putrefaction and renewal. To grasp the significance of Nurgle in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, one must first understand the cosmic chessboard upon which this pestilent deity plays. The galaxy of the 41st millennium teeters on the brink of annihilation, besieged by threats both internal and external. Amidst this maelstrom of conflict, the forces of chaos stand as perhaps the most insidious and pervasive danger to all sentient life. The ruinous powers of which Nurgle is a key player represent the dark reflection of mortal emotions and desires. While Khorne embodies rage and bloodshed, Tzeentch manipulation and change, and Slaanesh excess and pleasure, Nurgle holds dominion over despair, resilience, and the inexorable cycle of life and death. This unique portfolio makes the Plague God a formidable force in a universe where hope is scarce and survival is a daily struggle. Nurgle's influence extends far beyond the realms of demons and corrupted mortals. His plagues and diseases serve as both weapons of mass destruction and tools of conversion. Entire planetary populations have fallen to carefully crafted epidemics, their bodies and minds reshaped to serve the whims of the Lord of Decay. These biological nightmares pose a constant threat to the Imperium of man, challenging even the most advanced medical technologies and the superhuman resilience of the Adeptus Astartes. The Imperium, a galactic superpower spanning countless worlds, finds itself particularly vulnerable to Nurgle's touch. In a society where overpopulation, poor sanitation, and limited resources are commonplace, the conditions for pandemic outbreaks are ever present. The Plague God's followers exploit these weaknesses, turning the Imperium's own sprawling bureaucracy and technological stagnation against it. Yet Nurgle's reach extends beyond mere physical corruption. His philosophy of acceptance in the face of inevitable decay resonates with those who have lost all hope. In a galaxy torn apart by endless war, where trillions live and die in squalor, the promise of freedom from fear and pain holds immense appeal. This psychological aspect of Nurgle's influence makes him a uniquely insidious threat, capable of subverting entire populations without firing a single shot. The Adeptus Mechanicus, guardians of humanity's technological knowledge, find themselves locked in a constant battle against Nurgle's entropy. As machines break down and data degrades, the tech priests must wrestle with the fundamental principles of decay that the plague god embodies. This conflict extends to the very heart of their faith, challenging their belief in the supremacy of technology over the organic. Even the mighty Space Marines, genetically enhanced super soldiers designed to be humanity's ultimate defenders, are not immune to Nurgle's corrupting touch. The fall of the Death Guard Legion serves as a chilling reminder of how even the greatest heroes can succumb to the plague god's promises. These once noble warriors now serve as Nurgle's most feared champions, their enhanced physiology twisted into monstrous new forms that embody resilience and decay in equal measure. In the grand tapestry of galactic conflict, Nurgle's forces often play the role of opportunists. They thrive in the aftermath of other battles, turning war-torn worlds into breeding grounds for new plagues. This strategy allows the plague god to expand his influence while other factions exhaust themselves in direct confrontations, making him a patient but ever-present threat. The Eldar, an ancient race with psychic sensitivity, view Nurgle with particular horror. To them, he represents not just physical corruption, but the degradation of the soul itself. Their craft worlds employ complex psychic wards and rigorous spiritual practices to shield themselves from his influence, a testament to the serious threat he poses even to the most advanced civilizations. Understanding Nurgle's place in the Warhammer 40,000 universe reveals the intricate balance of power and ideology that shapes this grim future. His existence challenges fundamental concepts of progress, purity, and the very nature of life itself. As we delve deeper into the lore of the Plague God, we uncover a narrative that goes beyond simple conflict, touching on philosophical questions that resonate even in our own world. The origins of Nurgle stretch back to the tumultuous era known as the Age of Strife, a period of unprecedented chaos that engulfed the galaxy following the collapse of humanity's first interstellar civilization. As warp storms isolated human worlds and plunged them into darkness, fear, despair, and disease ran rampant. From this miasma of suffering, Nurgle coalesced in the warp, drawing power from the countless souls who succumbed to plague and desperation. Unlike his chaotic brethren, Nurgle's birth was a gradual process, mirroring the slow spread of contagion across the stars. As humanity regressed technologically and socially, ancient diseases thought long conquered re-emerged with terrifying potency. Entire populations were decimated, their anguish and resignation feeding the nascent god of decay. The fall of the Eldar Empire, a cataclysmic event that birthed Slaanesh, also played a crucial role in Nurgle's ascendance. As the Eldar's decadence reached its zenith, the psychic backlash tore a wound in reality, the Eye of Terror. This monumental disturbance in the warp allowed Nurgle's influence to spread more rapidly, his pestilent touch reaching further into the material realm. Nurgle's earliest mortal followers were not conquering warlords or cunning sorcerers, but desperate survivors and plague doctors. In their futile attempts to combat the myriad diseases ravaging their worlds, these individuals inadvertently drew the attention of the plague god. Nurgle, in his perverse benevolence, offered them gifts, immunities, and mutations that allowed them to endure, even as they became carriers of ever more virulent strains. The rise of the Imperium of Man brought new challenges and opportunities for Nurgle's faithful. As the Emperor's Great Crusade swept across the galaxy, many worlds were cleansed of mutation and disease. However, this very act of purification created a backlash in the Warp, strengthening Nurgle's position among the Chaos Gods. The Plague Father's followers went underground, infiltrating the nascent Imperial bureaucracy and concealing themselves among the teeming billions of newly compliant worlds. One of the most significant events in Nurgle's history was the corruption of the Death Guard Space Marine Legion. Led by their Primarch Mortarion, the Death Guard were known for their resilience and use of toxic weaponry. This affinity for poison and endurance made them prime targets for Nurgle's attentions. During the Horus Heresy, as their fleet became trapped in the Warp, Nurgle seized his opportunity. The entire Legion was subjected to a cocktail of plagues so potent that even their superhuman physiologies could not resist. Mortarion, in desperation to save his sons, struck a bargain with the Plague God. This pact transformed the Death Guard into the first Plague Marines, grotesque parodies of their former selves, but now imbued with unnatural resilience and the power to spread Nurgle's blessings across the galaxy. This event not only provided Nurgle with his greatest mortal champions, but also set a precedent for the corruption of other Space Marine chapters in the millennia to come. In the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, as the Imperium struggled to rebuild, Nurgle's influence grew exponentially. The massive death toll of the Civil War, combined with the general decline in living standards across human-controlled space, created perfect conditions for the spread of disease. Nurgle's followers took full advantage, instigating plagues that would reshape the political landscape of entire sectors. The creation of the Catric Maledictum, a galaxy-spanning warp rift, marked a new chapter in Nurgle's story. This monumental tear in reality allowed the Plague God's demons to manifest more easily in the material realm. Whole systems fell to demonic incursions led by Great Unclean Ones, Nurgle's most powerful servants. These bloated monstrosities directed campaigns of corruption and decay, turning prosperous worlds into plagued hellscapes. Throughout the long millennia of the Imperium's existence, Nurgle's power has waxed and waned. Periods of relative prosperity and advancement are inevitably followed by ages of plague and decay. This cyclical nature reflects Nurgle's own philosophy that all things must rot only to be reborn in new, often more terrible forms. The emergence of plague zombies on various Imperial worlds showcased a new facet of Nurgle's influence. These mindless, infectious hordes represented a fusion of Nurgle's pestilential powers with necromantic energies, blurring the line between life and death. Such outbreaks often served as precursors to full-scale demonic incursions, wearing down planetary defenses and sowing terror among the population. In recent times, Nurgle's followers have shown an alarming adaptability, creating new diseases capable of infecting even the most well-protected targets. Reports of Custodes and Primaris Marines succumbing to exotic flesh-eating bacteria have sent shockwaves through the Imperium's high command. These incidents underscore the ever-evolving nature of Nurgle's threat, forcing constant vigilance and adaptation from those who stand against the Plague God. As we delve deeper into Nurgle's role in the 41st millennium, it becomes clear that his influence is not merely a footnote in galactic history, but a driving force shaping the very fabric of this grim, dark future. The Lord of Decay's legacy is written in the festering wounds of countless worlds, a testament to the enduring power of entropy and the indomitable will of those who embrace it. The annals of galactic history are rife with cataclysmic events bearing Nurgle's putrid mark. These pivotal moments have shaped the course of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, leaving indelible scars on countless worlds and civilizations. The plague of unbelief, striking in the 36th millennium, ranks among the most devastating of Nurgle's early triumphs. This insidious contagion targeted not just the body, but the very faith of its victims. As the disease spread, it eroded belief in the Emperor, replacing it with a nihilistic despair that left populations ripe for corruption. Entire sectors fell into heresy, their inhabitants embracing Nurgle's philosophy of inevitable decay. In the wake of this spiritual epidemic, the ecclesiarchy found itself fighting a war on two fronts, against both physical corruption and ideological subversion. The resulting purges and witch hunts would reshape imperial doctrine for millennia to come, inadvertently creating fertile ground for future outbreaks of unrest and heresy. The doom of the Eldar Maiden world Yondin marked another significant victory for the Lord of Decay. This once vibrant craft world fell victim to a meticulously engineered plague that targeted the psychoreactive wraithbone forming the core of Eldar technology. As the craft world's infrastructure literally melted away, its inhabitants were forced to rely increasingly on spirit stones and wraith constructs, forever altering the balance of their society. This event not only devastated one of the largest Eldar populations in the galaxy, but also demonstrated Nurgle's ability to adapt his diseases to target even the most advanced and alien of physiologies. The fall of Yondin sent shockwaves through the remaining craft worlds, spurring them to develop new defenses against Nurgle's corrupting influence. The Siege of Vrax, a decades-long conflict in the 41st millennium, showcased the terrifying synergy between Nurgle's forces and other Chaos factions. What began as a simple rebellion against Imperial authority quickly spiraled into a full-scale demonic incursion. Nurgle's plague softened up the defenders, while Khornati berserkers and Slaaneshi cultists sowed chaos in the ranks. As the siege dragged on, Vrax itself began to change. The very soil became contaminated. Noxious fumes rose from bubbling pools of filth, and grotesque flora sprouted from the corpse-choked battlefields. By the time the Imperium finally reclaimed the planet, it was a twisted shadow of its former self, a testament to Nurgle's power to reshape reality in his image. The Plague Wars of Ultramar. In the wake of the Great Rift's formation, represented perhaps Nurgle's most ambitious campaign to date. Led by Mortarion, the demon Primarch of the Death Guard, Nurgle's forces struck at the heart of one of the Imperium's most stable and prosperous regions. The goal was nothing less than the corruption of Macragge itself, homeworld of the Ultramarines. This conflict saw the deployment of some of Nurgle's most horrific creations. The Pharaohs, an ancient device of immense power, was twisted into a beacon of corruption, spreading disease across dozens of systems simultaneously. Meanwhile, specially engineered destroyer plagues targeted the gene seed of loyalist space marines, threatening the very future of multiple chapters. The intervention of the reborn Primarch Robut Guilliman turned the tide of the Plague Wars, but not before hundreds of worlds had fallen to Nurgle's embrace. The aftermath of this conflict continues to shape Imperial policy, with increased resources devoted to medical research and the development of new quarantine protocols. The Gellerpox outbreak aboard the Adeptus Mechanicus ARC ship Omnissiah's Bounty highlighted the insidious nature of Nurgle's influence. This nightmarish fusion of organic corruption and technological malfunction saw servitors and tech priests alike transformed into monstrous hybrids of flesh and machine. The contaminated ARC ship drifting through the warp continues to pose a significant threat to any vessels it encounters. This incident strained relations between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Inquisition, as debates raged over the proper containment and study of such techno-organic hazards. It also spurred a new wave of research into the interaction between warp energies and Imperial technology, yielding both promising advancements and horrific failures. The carrion tide that swept through the Scarus sector demonstrated Nurgle's ability to turn the Imperium's own bureaucratic nature against it. What began as a simple clerical error in the Administratum's census data spiraled into a sector-wide catastrophe. As worlds were erroneously declared dead or uninhabited, vital supply lines were cut and populations left to fend for themselves. Nurgle's followers were quick to capitalize on the ensuing chaos, offering salvation to desperate populations in exchange for their allegiance. By the time the error was discovered and Imperial forces mobilized, entire systems had fallen to the Plague God's influence. The incident led to a significant overhaul of administrative procedures, though many fear it is only a matter of time before similar oversights occur. The bloom of Nurgle's rot on the agri-world of Gould Prime showcased the plague god's twisted sense of humor. What initially appeared to be a miraculous increase in crop yields was revealed to be the early stages of a complex infestation. As the infected crops were harvested and shipped off-world, they carried with them spores that would lie dormant for years before suddenly sprouting, transforming their consumers into fungal monstrosities. This long-term strategy demonstrated Nurgle's patience and foresight, with the full extent of the contamination only becoming apparent decades after the initial infection. The resulting food shortage and panic caused more damage to the Imperium than a direct military engagement, highlighting the insidious nature of Nurgle's tactics. As we reflect on these key events, a pattern emerges, one of relentless adaptation, insidious corruption, and the exploitation of systemic weaknesses. Nurgle's influence seeps into the very foundations of galactic civilization, challenging not just military might, but the fundamental structures and beliefs that hold society together. In the face of such a pervasive threat, the future of the galaxy hangs in a precarious balance, with each new outbreak potentially tipping the scales towards eternal decay. Nurgle's influence in the Warhammer 40,000 universe extends far beyond mere physical corruption, touching on fundamental aspects of existence itself. This deep analysis aims to unravel the complex web of motivations, philosophies, and consequences that surround the Lord of Decay and his followers. At its core, Nurgle's appeal lies in its promise of acceptance and freedom from fear. In a galaxy rife with constant war, oppression, and uncertainty, the plague god offers a perverse form of salvation. By embracing decay and disease, his followers claim to transcend the fear of death and suffering that plagues mortal existence. This psychological aspect of Nurgle's influence is perhaps its most insidious, as it preys on the most vulnerable and desperate members of society. The concept of resilience plays a central role in Nurgle's doctrine. His followers, particularly the Plague Marines, exhibit an unnatural ability to endure damage that would obliterate normal beings. This resilience, however, comes at a terrible cost. Their bodies become hosts to myriad diseases, existing in a state of constant agony that they perversely interpret as a form of ecstasy. This duality of suffering and endurance reflects the cyclical nature of Nurgle's philosophy, where death and rebirth are merely two sides of the same putrid coin. Nurgle's garden, his realm within the warp, serves as a macabre reflection of the material universe. Here, amidst rotting foliage and bubbling pools of filth, new diseases are cultivated and refined. This hellish domain challenges conventional notions of life and death, with decaying matter sprouting new and terrifying forms of existence. The garden stands as a testament to Nurgle's role as both destroyer and creator, embodying the principle that from death springs new life, albeit in forms that defy mortal comprehension. The relationship between Nurgle and his followers is uniquely paternal among the Chaos gods. Where Khorne demands blood and skulls, and Tzeentch manipulates his servants, Nurgle presents himself as a doting grandfather figure. This facade of affection, however twisted, creates a powerful bond between the deity and his worshippers. It's this emotional connection that often proves more resistant to Imperial efforts at redemption than any physical corruption. Nurgle's influence on Imperial tactics and strategy cannot be overstated. The threat of biological warfare has forced the development of increasingly sophisticated containment and decontamination protocols. Entire worlds have been consigned to exterminatus, not due to enemy occupation, but for fear of plague spreading beyond their borders. This willingness to sacrifice billions to contain Nurgle's influence speaks volumes about the perceived threat level of his corrupting touch. The Adeptus Mechanicus finds itself in a unique quandary when dealing with Nurgle's forces. The plague god's ability to corrupt both organic matter and machine spirits challenges the fundamental tenets of the cult Mechanicus. This has led to heated debates within the organization about the nature of machine purity and the best methods for safeguarding technology against chaotic influence. Some radical elements even propose studying Nurgle's techno-organic abominations in hopes of advancing their understanding of the machine god's will. In the realm of psychic warfare, Nurgle's presence manifests in uniquely horrifying ways. Plague-bearers, his most common demons, exude an aura of despair that can break the will of even the most stalwart defenders. Astropaths and navigators exposed to Nurgle's influence often experience vivid hallucinations of decay, their prophetic visions twisted into nightmarish scenarios of galactic rot. This psychic contamination can spread like a virus through the warp, infecting astropathic choirs and potentially disrupting vital interstellar communications. The ecological impact of Nurgle's corrupting influence presents a long-term existential threat to Imperial worlds. Once a planet falls to Nurgle, its entire biosphere is reshaped to serve the plague god's whims. Native flora and fauna mutate into grotesque parodies of their former selves, often becoming vectors for new and terrible diseases. These corrupted ecosystems can persist for millennia, resisting all efforts at purification and terraforming. In some cases, the only recourse is complete planetary sterilization, forever altering the strategic landscape of entire sectors. Nurgle's role in the Great Game, the eternal struggle between the Chaos Gods, is often underestimated. While Khorne and Tzeentch might appear more overtly aggressive, Nurgle's patient, insidious approach often yields the most lasting results. His plagues weaken the Materium's defenses against chaotic incursion, paving the way for his rival gods to exploit. This subtle strategy has led some scholars of the Ordo Malleus to consider Nurgle the most dangerous of the ruinous powers in the long term. The philosophical implications of Nurgle's existence challenge the very foundations of Imperial doctrine. The ecclesiarchy grapples with reconciling the concept of the Emperor's divine protection with the reality of Nurgle's plagues afflicting the faithful. This cognitive dissonance has given rise to splinter cults and heresies, some of which propose that disease is a form of divine testing, inadvertently making them more susceptible to Nurgle's influence. In the grand tapestry of the 41st millennium, Nurgle serves as a dark mirror to the Imperium itself. Where the Emperor's regime is stagnant and unyielding, Nurgle offers constant change, albeit in the form of decay. The Lord of Decay's promise of freedom from fear and acceptance of one's fate stands in stark contrast to the oppressive, paranoid nature of Imperial rule. This fundamental opposition ensures that the struggle against Nurgle's influence will remain a defining aspect of the Imperium's existence for millennia to come. As we delve deeper into the nature of Nurgle and his impact on the Warhammer 40,000 universe, we uncover layers of complexity that go far beyond simple notions of good and evil. The Plague God's influence touches on primal fears and desires, challenging our understanding of life, death, and the very nature of existence itself. In this grim, dark future, Nurgle stands as a testament to the resilience of life, even in its most grotesque and terrifying forms. The conflicts surrounding Nurgle in the Warhammer 40,000 universe are multifaceted, involving numerous factions with diverse motivations and perspectives. This complex web of alliances and enmities shapes the ongoing struggle against the Lord of Decay. At the forefront of Nurgle's forces stand the Death Guard, led by the demon Primarch Mortarion. Once proud space marines of the Emperor, they now serve as the Plague God's most elite mortal warriors. The Death Guard's fall from grace serves as a cautionary tale of how even the mightiest can succumb to Nurgle's corrupting influence. Their tactical acumen, combined with their unnatural resilience, makes them a formidable threat on any battlefield. Plague Marines, whether from the Death Guard or other corrupted chapters, form the backbone of Nurgle's military might. These walking disease factories blend superhuman combat skills with an array of virulent weaponry. Their presence on a battlefield often heralds the beginning of a larger plague outbreak, as their very existence contaminates the surrounding area. The Taliban of Nurgle represents the demonic side of the plague god's forces. Led by great unclean ones, massive demon lords that embody Nurgle's jovial yet revolting nature, these hordes of plague bearers and Nurglings swarm across real space wherever the veil between dimensions weakens. The psychological impact of facing such otherworldly horrors often proves as deadly as their physical attacks. Chaos cultists devoted to Nurgle play a crucial role in spreading his influence within Imperial society. These hidden cells work tirelessly to undermine planetary defenses, contaminate water supplies, and perform blasphemous rituals to weaken the barriers between real space and the warp. Their insidious activities often pave the way for larger chaos incursions. Standing against this tide of corruption, the Imperium of Man deploys a variety of specialized forces. The Ordo Malleus of the Inquisition takes the lead in identifying and neutralizing Nurgle-related threats. Inquisitors of this order often work closely with the Grey Knights, Space Marines specially equipped to combat demonic entities. These silver-armored warriors bring potent psychic abilities and sanctified weaponry to bear against Nurgle's minions. The Adeptus Ministorum, or Ecclesiarchy, plays a vital role in maintaining the spiritual purity of Imperial citizens. Their priests and missionaries work tirelessly to counteract Nurgle's nihilistic philosophy, offering hope and the promise of the Emperor's protection. In times of plague, the fiery oratory of a skilled preacher can be as effective as any medicine in maintaining public order and resistance to chaos. Adeptus Mechanicus forces approach the fight against Nurgle from a unique perspective. Tech priests and Skitarii legions deploy an arsenal of esoteric weaponry designed to combat both biological and mechanical corruption. Their obsession with purity of form often puts them at odds with Nurgle's followers, who revel in mutation and decay. The Adeptus Astartes, or Space Marines, serve as the Imperium's elite shock troops against Nurgle's forces. Chapters like the Ultramarines, who face the brunt of the Plague Wars, have developed specialized tactics and equipment for combating Nurgle's plagues. Their enhanced physiology provides some resistance to disease, but the threat of gene seed corruption remains a constant concern. Eldari, or Eldar, view Nurgle with particular abhorrence. Their psychically sensitive nature makes them especially vulnerable to the plague god's corrupting influence. Craftworld Iyanden, having suffered greatly at Nurgle's hands, deploys vast hosts of wraith constructs to combat his forces, their spectral nature providing some protection against disease. The Drukhari, or Dark Eldar, take a different approach. Their advanced medical technology and mastery of pain make them uniquely equipped to study and exploit Nurgle's plagues. Homunculus covens have been known to capture and experiment on Nurgle's followers, seeking to unlock the secrets of their unnatural resilience. Orcs present an interesting case in the conflict against Nurgle. Their robust physiology and gestalt psychic field provide a degree of natural resistance to disease. Some orc war bosses have even been known to view Nurgle's plagues as a welcome challenge, a chance to prove their toughness by overcoming the most virulent diseases the galaxy has to offer. The Tyranid hive mind approaches Nurgle's forces as both a threat and a potential source of new bioforms to assimilate. Battles between Tyranid and Nurgle forces often result in bizarre and terrifying new strains of both Xenos and plague organisms. The shadow in the warp projected by large Tyranid fleets can disrupt Nurgle's psychic influence, making them one of the few forces capable of stemming the tide of corruption on a galactic scale. Necron dynasties, with their living metal bodies immune to disease, stand as one of the few factions largely unaffected by Nurgle's plagues. Their advanced technology, capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe, presents a significant threat to Nurgle's plans. Some cryptechs have even developed weapons capable of severing the connection between Nurgle's demons and the warp, banishing them back to their putrid realm. The Tau Empire, with its limited warp presence, initially appeared resistant to chaos corruption. However, recent encounters with Nurgle's forces have exposed vulnerabilities in their society. The collectivist philosophy of the greater good, when twisted by Nurgle's influence, can lead to the rapid spread of both physical and ideological contamination through Tau Seps. Rogue traders and independent human factions often find themselves caught between these larger powers. Some see opportunity in the chaos, smuggling forbidden tech or esoteric cures to plague-ridden worlds. Others unwittingly become vectors for Nurgle's diseases, spreading corruption across vast distances through interstellar trade routes. As the conflict against Nurgle rages across the galaxy, alliances shift and strategies evolve. The Plague God's influence touches all, forcing even bitter enemies to occasionally cooperate in the face of overwhelming corruption. In this grim, dark future, the battle against Nurgle serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the constant threat of decay that looms over all existence. The inexorable spread of Nurgle's influence reached its zenith in the wake of the Great Rift's formation. This galaxy-spanning tear in reality ushered in a new era of unprecedented chaos incursions, with Nurgle's forces at the forefront of this cataclysmic assault on the material realm. The Plague Wars of Ultramar stand as the pinnacle of Nurgle's ambitions during this tumultuous period. Led by the demon Primarch Mortarion, the Death Guard and their allies launched a massive campaign against one of the Imperium's most stalwart bastions. This conflict not only threatened the physical realm, but also challenged the very ideological foundations of the Ultramarines and their associated worlds. Nurgle's strategy during the Plague Wars demonstrated a level of coordination rarely seen among Chaos forces. Precision strikes targeted key infrastructure, while specially engineered diseases attacked the gene seed of loyalist Space Marines. The Plague Father's forces exploited the bureaucratic nature of the Imperium, using contaminated administrative data to sow confusion and misdirect reinforcements. The culmination of Nurgle's offensive saw the deployment of the Atropos device, a corrupted version of the ancient Pharaoh's beacon. This technological abomination amplified the spread of disease across multiple systems simultaneously, overwhelming even the most advanced Imperial medical facilities. The device's activation marked a turning point in the conflict, pushing the defenders of Ultramar to the brink of annihilation. In response to this existential threat, the Imperium unleashed its most potent weapons. The reborn Primarch Robut Guilliman personally led the counteroffensive, his strategic genius matching wits with Mortarion's pestilential tactics. The clash between these two transhuman demigods embodied the larger conflict between order and entropy, with the fate of multiple sectors hanging in the balance. The martyrdom of Saint Celestine during the Battle of Ophelia VII became a rallying point for Imperial forces. The living saint sacrificed herself to cleanse an entire continent of Nurgle's corruption, her fiery demise igniting a wave of faith that burned away the miasma of despair engulfing the populace. This act of selfless heroism inspired countless Imperial citizens to resist Nurgle's nihilistic philosophy, proving that hope could flourish even in the darkest of circumstances. Adeptus Mechanicus forces achieved a significant breakthrough with the development of the Omniphage Purifier. This marvel of techno-arcane engineering could rewrite the core structure of corrupted matter, effectively reversing the process of Nurgle's decay. While limited in scope and exorbitantly expensive to produce, the Omniphage Purifier represented a rare victory in the usually one-sided arms race against chaos corruption. The Eldar's desperate gambit on the maiden world of Iana Yana marked another crucial moment in the conflict. Faced with imminent destruction by Nurgle's forces, the world spirit merged with its infinity circuit, creating a gestalt entity of unprecedented psychic power. This newborn godlike being unleashed a purifying flame that scoured the planet of corruption, but also consumed the souls of every Eldar on the surface. The long-term consequences of this action remain a subject of fierce debate among Farseers across the galaxy. Nurgle's influence reached new heights with the emergence of the Bloomtide phenomenon. This insidious form of corruption manifested as rapidly growing, psychically active fungal growths that could overtake entire hive cities in a matter of days. The bloom tide not only transformed urban landscapes into nightmarish gardens, but also acted as a conduit for demonic incursions, blurring the line between real space and the Garden of Nurgle. The Ordo Malleus responded to this escalating threat by sanctioning the use of the Terminus Decree, a set of forbidden protocols of last resort. Inquisitorial strike teams deployed experimental weaponry that could sever the connection between corrupted areas and the warp. While effective, these operations often resulted in the complete destruction of the target zones, leaving vast swaths of dead space in their wake. Nurgle's ascendancy didn't go unchallenged by his rival Chaos gods. Tzeentch, in particular, moved to check the Plague Father's growing power. The Changer of Ways unleashed a plague of his own, a mutagenic curse that caused Nurgle's carefully cultivated diseases to evolve beyond control. This blessing of inconstancy led to internecine conflicts among Nurgle's forces as different strains of corruption battled for dominance. The Tyrannid High Fleet Hydra's encounter with a Nurgle-corrupted system produced unforeseen consequences. As the Tyrannids attempted to consume the tainted biomass, their own hyper-adaptive physiology absorbed aspects of Nurgle's corruption. The resulting Tyrannid strains exhibited an unsettling blend of Xenos efficiency and demonic resilience, presenting a new and terrifying threat to all life in the galaxy. Necron Overlord Zyphra's activation of the Celestial Orrery to purge a Nurgle-infested sector showcased the lengths to which even the most ancient races would go to contain the Plague God's influence. The resulting supernova cascade sterilized hundreds of worlds, but also risked destabilizing the very fabric of real space. This drastic action highlighted the existential nature of the threat posed by Nurgle's unrestrained expansion. The climax of Nurgle's campaign saw the manifestation of a great unclean one of unprecedented power, Rotigus, the Rainfather. This colossal demon lord brought with it storms of filth that could cover entire continents, its every step spawning new and terrible life forms. Rotigus's arrival heralded a new phase in Nurgle's assault on reality, blending the material and immaterial in ways that defied comprehension. As the conflict reached its peak, the lines between victor and vanquished blurred. Nurgle's forces had achieved unprecedented gains, corrupting vast swaths of Imperial space. Yet the very nature of their success carried the seeds of potential defeat. The rampant spread of disease threatened to consume all available hosts, potentially robbing Nurgle of the mortal suffering that fueled his power. In this moment of crisis, as the galaxy teetered on the brink of total corruption, the stage was set for a new chapter in the eternal struggle between life and death, purity and decay. The actions taken in the aftermath of this cataclysmic culmination would shape the fate of countless worlds and determine the course of the Imperium's war against the ruinous powers for millennia to come. The aftermath of Nurgle's grand offensive left an indelible mark on the galaxy, reshaping the political, ecological, and spiritual landscape of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. The consequences of this cataclysmic event continue to reverberate across time and space, influencing the strategies and philosophies of every major faction. In the wake of the Plague Wars, the Ultramar sector emerged forever changed. While Roboute Guilliman's intervention ultimately repelled the worst of Nurgle's assault, many worlds remain tainted by lingering corruption. Quarantine zones span entire systems, patrolled by specially equipped Adeptus Astartes task forces. These contaminated regions serve as grim reminders of the price of victory, with millions of citizens trapped in a hellish existence, their bodies and minds warped by exposure to Nurgle's gifts. The Imperium's Pyrrhic triumph came at a staggering cost. Countless worlds fell to Exterminatus, deemed too corrupted to save. This mass sterilization of Imperial space created vast dead zones, altering trade routes and strategic calculations across multiple segmentums. Refugee crises strained the resources of neighboring sectors, while opportunistic Xenos races moved to claim abandoned territories, further complicating the already tenuous balance of power. Nurgle's incursion catalyzed a revolution in Imperial medical technology. The Adeptus Mechanicus, spurred by the existential threat of demonic plagues, redoubled their efforts to unlock the secrets of the human genome. This research led to breakthroughs in gene therapy and bio-augmentation, blurring the line between the sacred human form and abhorrent mutation. Debates rage within the Adeptus Ministorum over the spiritual implications of these advancements, threatening schisms that could further fracture imperial unity. The Astra Militarum underwent a radical reorganization in response to the unique challenges posed by Nurgle's forces. New specialist regiments, trained in chemical warfare and decontamination procedures, now form the vanguard of imperial responses to plague outbreaks. These Purgation Corps operate with a level of autonomy unprecedented in imperial military doctrine, authorized to implement extreme measures to contain the spread of corruption. Among the Adeptus Astartes, a new philosophy emerged. The doctrine of resilience, pioneered by ultramarine successors, emphasizes spiritual fortitude as much as physical prowess. Chapter cult practices now incorporate rituals designed to strengthen the mind against the insidious whispers of Nurgle's emissaries. Some more radical chapters have gone so far as to intentionally expose their neophytes to controlled doses of Nurgle's plagues, believing that only by facing corruption directly can true resistance be developed. The ecclesiarchy faced a crisis of faith in the aftermath of Nurgle's onslaught. Many citizens, having witnessed the apparent impotence of imperial creed in the face of demonic plagues, turned to forbidden cults promising protection or acceptance. In response, the Adeptus Ministorum launched the Crusade of Purity, a galaxy-wide campaign of religious revivalism. New saints arose, their miraculous acts of healing and purification offering hope to beleaguered populations. However, this fervor also led to increased paranoia and witch hunts, as zealots sought to root out any hint of corruption. Nurgle's followers, despite being driven back, achieved several long-term objectives. The veil between real space and the warp thinned considerably in many regions, facilitating easier manifestation of demonic entities. Plague cults proliferated in the shadows of hive cities, their networks spreading like a cancer through imperial bureaucracy. These hidden adherents worked tirelessly to undermine quarantine efforts and sow the seeds for future outbreaks. The Death Guard Legion, though denied total victory, secured several key footholds in strategic locations across the galaxy. These festering bases serve as staging grounds for future incursions and as beacons of Nurgle's influence, their very existence a challenge to imperial authority. Warp storms surrounding these strongholds render them nearly impregnable, forcing the Imperium to commit vast resources to containment rather than eradication. In the realm of naval warfare, the aftermath of Nurgle's offensive saw the rise of void quarantine tactics. Imperial Navy doctrine now emphasizes the use of specialized interdictor ships capable of creating localized warp disruption fields. These vessels form cordons around infected star systems, preventing both escape and reinforcement. However, this strategy has led to moral dilemmas, as entire populations are sometimes abandoned to their fate in the name of containing the greater threat. The Adeptus Mechanicus's development of the Omniphage Purifier, while promising, introduced new complications. The device's ability to rewrite corrupted matter at the molecular level raised uncomfortable questions about the nature of reality and the Mechanicus's understanding of the physical universe. Some tech priests argue that the technology borders on techno-heresy, coming dangerously close to replicating the reality-warping abilities of the warp. Eldar craft worlds, reeling from the loss of Yana Yana, implemented drastic measures to safeguard against future corruption. Many craft worlds now exist in a state of perpetual psychic lockdown, their infinity circuits isolated behind layers of arcane wards. While effective at repelling Nurgle's influence, this self-imposed exile has severely limited the Elder's ability to coordinate and respond to wider galactic threats. The Tyrannid Hive Fleet. Hydra's absorption of Nurglite traits sent shockwaves through the Ordo Xenos. The prospect of Tyranid bioforms enhanced by demonic resilience represents a nightmare scenario for Imperial strategists. Inquisitorial think tanks now grapple with the possibility that the Tyranid invasion may have been an unconscious response by the galaxy itself to counter the threat of chaos, adding new layers of complexity to humanity's fight for survival. Necron dynasties, witnessing the devastation wrought by Nurgle's forces, accelerated their plans for galactic reclamation. The Necrons' immunity to disease makes them uniquely suited to cleanse corrupted worlds, a fact not lost on desperate Imperial commanders. Uneasy alliances have formed in some sectors, with Necron legions granted passage through Imperial space in exchange for their assistance in purging Nurgle's taint. These pacts, while expedient, sow seeds of discord within the Imperium's upper echelons. The Tau Empire, initially believed to be resistant to chaos corruption, suffered several setbacks as Nurgle's influence seeped into their society. The collectivist philosophy of the greater good proved vulnerable to mimetic plagues that spread through entire septs like wildfire. In response, the ethereal caste implemented strict information quarantine protocols, further isolating Tau worlds from the wider galaxy and potentially stunting their expansion. As the dust settles on this latest chapter in the eternal war against chaos, the galaxy finds itself in a precarious new equilibrium. Nurgle's power has waxed, yet the very extent of his success threatens to upset the delicate balance between the ruinous powers. The Imperium, bloodied but unbroken, faces the monumental task of rebuilding while remaining vigilant against future incursions. In this grim, dark future, the resilience of life itself has been tested, and the true cost of survival in a universe plagued by entropy and decay has been laid bare for all to see. Nurgle's corrupting influence extends far beyond his immediate followers, reshaping the destinies of individuals and altering the course of pivotal events across the Warhammer 40,000 universe. This far-reaching impact has created ripple effects that continue to shape the galaxy's future. The resurrected Primarch Robot Guilliman found his strategic genius tested to its limits during the Plague Wars. The experience of combating Nurgle's forces on such a massive scale forced Guilliman to re-evaluate many of his long-held beliefs about warfare and governance. In the aftermath, he implemented sweeping reforms to the Codex Astartes, incorporating new tactics specifically designed to counter the insidious spread of Nurgle's corruption. These changes have had profound effects on Space Marine chapters across the Imperium, altering centuries-old traditions and sparking heated debates about the nature of their duty. Belisarius Cawl, the enigmatic archmagos of the Adeptus Mechanicus, became obsessed with understanding and replicating Nurgle's power over life and death. His experiments with captured plague spores led to breakthroughs in biotechnology that proved crucial in the development of the Primaris Space Marines. However, rumors persist that some of Cawl's creations exhibit disturbing similarities to Nurgle's own works, raising questions about the purity of these new transhuman warriors. The fall of the night world Crastus to Nurgle's forces had unforeseen consequences for the balance of power among the noble houses. As news of Crastus's corruption spread, other night worlds began to adopt increasingly isolationist policies, fearing similar fates. This shift in behavior has strained relationships with the Adeptus Mechanicus and hampered Imperial military efforts in several key sectors, as once reliable Knight allies become hesitant to deploy off-world. Saint Celestine's martyrdom during the Battle of Ophelia Seveneven sent shockwaves through the Adepta Sororitas. The living saint's sacrifice in the face of Nurgle's corruption inspired a new generation of battle sisters to take up arms against the forces of chaos. The Order of the Cleansing Flame, founded in the wake of this event, has gained notoriety for its zealous pursuit of purity, often resorting to extreme measures to eradicate even the slightest hint of taint. Inquisitor Greyfax, renowned for her incorruptible nature, found her faith tested to its limits during an investigation into a Nurgle cult on the hive world of Necromunda. The experience left her with a newfound appreciation for the insidious nature of chaos corruption, leading her to advocate for more proactive and aggressive measures against potential Nurgle incursions. Her influence has shaped inquisitorial policy, resulting in increased surveillance and harsher crackdowns on suspected cult activity across the Imperium. The Inari, already walking a precarious path between life and death, discovered an unexpected synergy with certain aspects of Nurgle's power. Yvraine, the faction's leader, began experimenting with controlled exposure to Nurgle's diseases as a means of strengthening her followers' connection to Enid, the Eldar god of death. This controversial practice has widened the rift between the Inari and more traditional Eldar, potentially jeopardizing united efforts against common enemies. Gazk'ul Thraka, the notorious Orc warlord, encountered a Nurgle-corrupted world during one of his campaigns. The experience sparked a new obsession in the Orc psyche, with many war bosses now seeking out plague-ridden battlefields as the ultimate test of their toughness. This shift in Orc behavior has led to several unexpected alliances between Orc and Nurgle forces, creating headaches for Imperial tacticians who must now contend with this unholy combination of brute strength and infectious resilience. The Tau Empire's Fourth Sphere expansion fleet, already traumatized by their harrowing journey through the warp, fell victim to a subtle strain of Nurgle's influence. The infected Tau exhibited a twisted version of their greater good philosophy, interpreting unity through a lens of decay and shared suffering. This corruption has forced the ethereal caste to implement strict isolation protocols for repatriated Fourth Sphere personnel, stunting the Tau's expansion efforts and sowing seeds of discord within their carefully ordered society. Fabius Bile, the infamous Chaos Space Marine apothecary, found his own experiments challenged by Nurgle's creations. The encounter with particularly resilient plague strains inspired Bile to redouble his efforts in creating the perfect warrior, incorporating elements of Nurgle's diseases into his own twisted designs. The resulting abominations have become highly sought after by various chaos warbands, shifting the balance of power among the forces of the Dark Gods. The Necron overlord Trazyn the Infinite added several specimens of Nurgle's most unique creations to his vast collection. However, the attempt to contain these warp-tainted entities led to unforeseen complications, causing disturbances in the stasis fields protecting other exhibits. This chain reaction forced Trazyn to release several of his most powerful acquisitions to combat the spreading corruption, inadvertently influencing conflicts across multiple sectors as ancient horrors were unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy. The Adeptus Custodes, guardians of the Emperor's palace on Terra, found their vigilance tested by new and insidious forms of Nurgle's corruption, attempting to infiltrate the heart of the Imperium. This threat prompted the development of advanced psychospiritual screening techniques, which have since been adopted by other Imperial organizations. However, the increased paranoia and rigorous testing have also slowed crucial communications and troop movements, potentially leaving the Imperium vulnerable in other areas. Commissar Yarek, the legendary nemesis of Gazk'ul Thraka, encountered a Nurgle warband during the defense of Armageddon. The experience left him with a festering wound that refused to heal, a mark of Nurgle's attention. Yarek's stubborn refusal to succumb to the infection has made him a symbol of humanity's resilience against chaos, inspiring troops across the sector. However, concerns about his potential corruption have led to increased scrutiny from the Inquisition, complicating his ability to lead effectively. The Genestealer cults, already a blight on Imperial worlds, discovered that their hybrids exhibited an unusual resistance to certain strains of Nurgle's plagues. This unexpected development has led some cult leaders to actively seek out Nurgle-corrupted areas, believing that exposure will strengthen their broods. The resulting hybrid strains pose a unique threat, combining the rapid reproduction of Genestealers with the resilience of Nurgle's Chosen, creating new challenges for Imperial Defense forces. Lord Commander Dante of the Blood Angels found his chapter's future irrevocably altered by encounters with Nurgle's forces. The unique interaction between the Blood Angel's gene seed flaw and Nurgle's diseases produced unforeseen mutations, offering both promising advancements in their fight against the Black Rage and terrifying new manifestations of their curse. Dante's decisions in handling these developments have strained relationships with successor chapters and drawn unwanted attention from both the Inquisition and rival Chaos factions. As Nurgle's influence continues to spread, its tendrils touching every corner of the galaxy, the very nature of conflict in the 41st millennium evolves. Traditional battle lines blur as corruption seeps into the ranks of every faction, forcing allies and enemies alike to constantly reassess their strategies and allegiances. In this grim, dark future, the impact of the Lord of Decay reaches far beyond the battlefield, reshaping the destinies of individuals and civilizations in ways that will resonate for millennia to come. Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, embodies a rich tapestry of symbolism and themes that resonate deeply within the grim darkness of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These elements not only define Nurgle's character, but also reflect and comment on broader aspects of the setting and, by extension, our own reality. At its core, Nurgle represents the inescapable cycle of life, death, and rebirth. This eternal loop manifests in the constant decay and regeneration witnessed in his realm and followers. The Plague God's Garden, a grotesque paradise of rotting vegetation and bubbling pestilence, serves as a microcosm of this cycle. Here, death begets life in endless, horrifying iterations, challenging our perceptions of what it means to truly live or die. The concept of acceptance stands as a central theme in Nurgle's philosophy. His followers embrace their afflictions, finding strength and even joy in their suffering. This radical acceptance serves as a dark mirror to Stoic philosophies, pushing the idea of resignation to its most extreme and repulsive conclusion. In a universe defined by constant war and oppression, Nurgle's offer of freedom from fear through embracing the inevitable decay can be seen as a twisted form of salvation. Nurgle's appearance as a jovial, grandfatherly figure introduces the theme of deceptive benevolence. This paternal facade masks the true horror of his nature, much like how diseases in the real world can spread through seemingly innocuous vectors. This duality serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of uncritical acceptance and the potential for corruption hidden behind a veneer of kindness or tradition. The theme of resilience permeates every aspect of Nurgle's domain. His followers, particularly the Death Guard, exhibit supernatural endurance, shrugging off wounds that would annihilate lesser beings. This unnatural toughness symbolizes the adaptability of life itself, while also serving as a grim reminder that what refuses to die isn't always benign. In the context of the Imperium's stagnant, decaying empire, Nurgle's resilient hordes can be seen as a dark reflection of humanity's own tenacious, clinging to a rotting ideological corpse. Entropy, the gradual decline into disorder, stands as one of Nurgle's most profound symbols. In a universe where the Imperium desperately tries to maintain order and stasis, Nurgle's forces represent the inexorable tide of chaos and change. This conflict between order and entropy mirrors real-world tensions between conservation and progress, tradition and innovation. The motif of transformation runs deep in Nurgle's lore. His plagues don't just destroy, they alter and mutate. This metamorphosis can be seen as a twisted parallel to the Imperium's own transhuman modifications, raising questions about the nature of humanity and the prices paid for power or survival. The horrific mutations of Nurgle's victims serve as a grotesque parody of evolution, challenging the very concept of progress. Nurgle's diseases often target the mind as much as the body, introducing the theme of cognitive corruption. This aspect highlights the interconnectedness of mental and physical health, while also serving as a metaphor for how ideologies can spread and infect societies. The mimetic nature of Nurgle's plagues mirrors the real-world spread of information or misinformation in our interconnected age. The symbol of the fly, ubiquitous in Nurgle's iconography, carries multiple layers of meaning. Flies are carriers of disease, representing the insidious spread of corruption. They're also associated with decay and death, tying into Nurgle's domain over these aspects of existence. Furthermore, the fly's rapid reproduction and adaptability mirror the relentless proliferation of Nurgle's influence. Nurgle's realm and followers often exhibit a grotesque fecundity, with new life sprouting from decay in horrific abundance. This fertility amidst rot introduces a theme of perverse creativity, challenging the notion that creation and destruction are opposites. In Nurgle's paradigm, they are merely two sides of the same putrid coin, each feeding into the other in an endless cycle. The concept of unity through shared suffering is a recurring theme in Nurgle's doctrine. His plagues create a twisted form of equality, reducing all to the same decaying state regardless of their former status. This dark egalitarianism serves as a grim parody of utopian ideals, questioning the costs of true unity and the nature of individuality in the face of collective hardship. Nurgle's influence often manifests through corruption of the everyday and mundane. Common ailments mutate into horrific plagues. Familiar environments transform into nightmarish landscapes. This perversion of the ordinary highlights the fragility of normalcy and the potential for the familiar to become alien, a theme that resonates with cosmic horror traditions. The theme of inevitability permeates Nurgle's philosophy. His followers see decay and death not as enemies to be fought, but as natural, even desirable states to be embraced. This fatalistic viewpoint stands in stark contrast to the Imperium's constant struggle for survival, raising questions about the value of resistance in the face of overwhelming odds. Nurgle's plagues often exploit and exacerbate existing weaknesses, serving as a symbol for how societal problems, left unchecked, can fester and grow into existential threats. This aspect of Nurgle's influence can be seen as a commentary on the dangers of ignoring systemic issues, both in the fictional Imperium and in our own world. The dichotomy between Nurgle's outward joviality and the horror of his true nature introduces the theme of cognitive dissonance. His followers often express joy in their afflicted state, a stark contrast to the revulsion they inspire in others. This dissonance serves as a metaphor for the human capacity to normalize or even celebrate objectively terrible conditions, a phenomenon observed in various real-world scenarios. Ultimately, Nurgle embodies the concept of change through decay. In a universe where the Imperium desperately clings to the past and resists all forms of progress, Nurgle's forces represent an antithesis, a form of change so extreme and horrific that it makes stagnation seem preferable. This tension between stasis and change, preservation and transformation, lies at the heart of many conflicts within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Through these symbols and themes, Nurgle transcends his role as a mere antagonist, becoming a complex metaphor for various aspects of existence. His presence in the narrative forces characters and readers alike to confront uncomfortable truths about life, death, change, and the nature of resilience in a hostile universe. In the grim darkness of the far future, Nurgle stands as a festering reminder that even in decay, life finds a way, though the forms it takes may be far from what we desire or recognize. Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, stands as one of the most fascinatingly repulsive creations in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. His existence challenges our perceptions of life, death, and the nature of change in a way that few other elements of the setting can match. As we conclude our exploration of this pestilential deity, it's worth reflecting on the broader implications of his presence in the narrative and what it means for both the fictional universe and our understanding of it. One cannot help but admire the dark genius behind Nurgle's conception. In a galaxy teeming with threats that can be shot, stabbed, or blown up, Nurgle represents an enemy that defies conventional warfare. His plagues ignore fortifications. His ideology seeps through the cracks of even the most stalwart faith, and his very existence questions the fundamental nature of reality. This multifaceted threat elevates Nurgle from a mere antagonist to a force of nature, an inescapable aspect of existence that must be constantly grappled with. The philosophical implications of Nurgle's doctrine are particularly intriguing. In embracing decay and finding joy in suffering, his followers present a radical alternative to the Imperium's doctrine of constant struggle and sacrifice. While undoubtedly horrific, there's a certain twisted logic to accepting the inevitable and finding peace in it. This aspect of Nurgle's lore invites readers to question their own beliefs about progress, struggle, and the nature of happiness in adversity. Nurgle's role as a corrupting influence on technology presents a fascinating counterpoint to the Adeptus Mechanicus's reverence for machines. In a universe where the line between technology and sorcery is often blurred, Nurgle's techno-organic abominations serve as a grim reminder of the potential dangers of unchecked technological advancement. This tension between progress and corruption adds depth to the setting's exploration of humanity's relationship with technology. The visual aesthetics associated with Nurgle deserve special mention. The juxtaposition of decay and fecundity, the grotesque yet oddly fascinating mutations, and the sheer variety of diseases and afflictions showcase the boundless creativity of the setting's designers. Nurgle's artwork and miniatures often evoke a visceral response, challenging hobbyists and painters to push their skills to new limits in representing this nauseating splendor. From a narrative perspective, Nurgle's presence adds a layer of horror to the already grim Warhammer 40,000 universe. The body horror aspects of his plagues, combined with the psychological terror of losing one's identity to joyous corruption, create a unique form of cosmic dread. This element of horror enriches the setting, providing a different flavor of threat compared to the more straightforward violence of other factions. The ecological impact of Nurgle's influence raises interesting questions about the nature of life and ecosystems. His ability to transform entire biospheres challenges our understanding of what constitutes a living environment. In some ways, Nurgle's corrupted worlds can be seen as a dark mirror to the Tyranids' consumption of biomass. Both reshape planets to suit their needs, but with vastly different methodologies and results. Nurgle's relationship with his followers presents an intriguing exploration of the concept of love in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. While undoubtedly twisted, the affection Nurgle shows for his devotees stands in stark contrast to the often cold and uncaring nature of the Emperor or other Chaos gods. This perverse form of love adds a layer of complexity to Nurgle's character, making him more than just a mindless force of destruction. The resilience of Nurgle's followers serves as a grim reminder of life's tenacity. In a universe where humanity's existence is constantly threatened, the ability of Nurgle's plagues to persist and thrive in the harshest conditions is both terrifying and oddly inspiring. It forces us to consider the lengths to which life will go to survive and adapt, even if the results are far from what we would consider desirable. From a game design perspective, Nurgle's faction offers unique tactical challenges and opportunities. The combination of resilience, psychological warfare, and area denial creates a playstyle unlike any other in the Warhammer 40,000 tabletop game. This diversity of approach enriches the gaming experience, providing players with distinct strategic options that go beyond simple martial prowess. The concept of time and change is central to Nurgle's character, and it's worth considering how this relates to the broader Warhammer 40,000 narrative. In a setting often criticized for its stagnation, Nurgle represents a form of change, albeit a horrific one. This tension between stasis and decay adds depth to the universe, challenging the notion that the status quo can or should be maintained indefinitely. Nurgle's influence on language and terminology within the Warhammer 40,000 universe is noteworthy. The vivid, often nauseating descriptions of his plagues and followers have enriched the lexicon of the setting, creating a unique vocabulary that enhances the immersive experience for fans. Terms like Grandfather Nurgle or Nurgle's Rot have become iconic within the community, instantly evoking powerful imagery and associations. As we conclude our exploration of Nurgle, It's clear that his presence in the Warhammer 40,000 universe serves multiple crucial functions. He acts as a foil to the Imperium's ideals, a source of existential dread, a philosophical challenge, and a wellspring of creative inspiration for both creators and fans. Nurgle's complexity and depth make him far more than just another villain in a galaxy full of threats. Ultimately, Nurgle embodies the paradoxical nature of life itself, beautiful in its resilience, horrific in its excesses, and endlessly fascinating in its complexity. His existence in the narrative forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about mortality, change, and the nature of existence. In doing so, Nurgle transcends his role as a fictional character, becoming a lens through which we can examine our own beliefs and fears. As the Warhammer 40,000 universe continues to evolve, Nurgle's influence is likely to remain a constant, festering presence. His plagues will continue to challenge the greatest minds of the Imperium. His philosophy will tempt those seeking escape from a harsh reality, and his very existence will serve as a reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, even death itself is no refuge from the relentless tide of conflict and change. In embracing the grotesque and finding meaning in decay, Nurgle challenges us to look beyond surface appearances and consider the deeper cycles of existence. Whether you find his lore repulsive or fascinating, or more likely a bit of both, there's no denying the crucial role he plays in making the Warhammer 40,000 universe the rich, complex, and endlessly engaging setting that has captivated fans for decades. In the grand tapestry of this dark future, Nurgle's thread may be putrid, but it is undeniably essential.